Mark was a college student living in Indiana. His house was quiet and sat next to some woods. During the day, everything felt normal, but at night, the woods made the place feel strange. Behind his house, under the patio, there was a hot tub. That's where everything happened. It was Saturday night, March 29th, around 12:30 a.m. Spring break was ending and school was starting again soon. Mark had his 3 close friends over, Kyle, Keenan, and Derek. They were spending one last night hanging out. They were in the garage playing pool, blasting music, and drinking. Everyone was laughing and having fun. It felt like a good night. After a while, Kyle said they should go in the hot tub. It was cold outside, so the warm water sounded even better. Everyone agreed. They got changed into swim trunks, grabbed their drinks, and went into the hot tub. The warm water felt good as they talked, made jokes, and didn't pay attention to the time. Then they heard something. It was the sound of sticks breaking, like footsteps coming from the woods. It didn't sound like an animal, it sounded like a person. They all went quiet and looked around. Keenan tried to calm everyone down and said it was probably nothing. The others laughed, but it was more to stop feeling nervous. They turned the music up louder and tried to keep talking. About 10 minutes later, a man walked out of the woods. He stepped into the light from the patio. He was wearing a long black coat, white sweatpants, and a gaming headset. His eyes were wide, and his face didn't show any feeling. Everyone jumped. They yelled at him and asked who he was and what he was doing. The man raised his hands and said his name was Seth. He said he was 33 years old, and he heard them laughing and wanted to join. The guys just looked at each other, confused. Mark told him to leave, but he didn't listen. Instead, Seth took off his coat, then his shoes, and then his pants. He was now in only his underwear. Then he got into the hot tub. No one knew what to say. Mark pulled out his phone and started recording, not for fun, but because the whole thing felt unreal. This was the footage he captured. Wait, I saw the dream right there. What was over here? They started asking Seth questions, like where he came from and if he knew anyone there. He just kept saying he heard them laughing and wanted to hang out. Then he said something really disturbing. He said he had molested a child. That changed everything, obviously. The guys jumped out of the hot tub and started yelling at him to leave. They pulled him out of the water. Seth didn't try to stop them. He just stood there, dripping wet and staring. Then he slowly walked back into the woods without saying anything. The group ran inside and locked all the doors. Some of them laughed nervously, trying to shake it off, but Mark and Kyle didn't feel okay. They felt like it wasn't over. About 15 minutes passed. Kyle said they should go back out to lock the hot tub. Mark said okay. So they got flashlights and stepped outside. That's when Mark saw something next to the hot tub. It was a phone. He picked it up and saw the screen light up. Whatever was on the lock screen made him drop the phone. He didn't say what it was, but it scared him. He said he thought Seth would come back, so they ran inside and told the others. Everyone tried to stay calm. Then they heard a tapping sound on the window. Mark already knew who it was. He opened the curtain, and wouldn't you know it, Seth was standing right there. His face was pale, his eyes were wide open, and he had a creepy smile. He didn't say anything, he didn't move, he just stared. Mark yelled for Kyle. Kyle ran in and called the police. Mark grabbed a bat and went to the front door. He yelled for Seth to leave and take his phone. Seth didn't answer. Instead, he slowly walked around the side of the house. Mark followed a little bit and looked through the patio window. Seth was standing there again, staring inside. Mark told him the cops were coming and that he needed to leave, but Seth didn't move. He just slowly raised his hand and waved once. Then he turned and walked back into the woods. The police arrived a few minutes later. The guys told them everything. The officers searched the woods and found Seth standing alone, just looking toward the house. They arrested him for trespassing, and everyone thought it was over. But Mark didn't feel that way. A few days later, he saw a post on Snapchat from a girl who lived nearby. It was a video. It showed another man, not Seth, trying to break into her house late at night. That's what bothered Mark the most. It meant Seth might not be the only one out there. There could be more. They could be connected, and they might not be done. A few years ago, 3 high school friends named Beck, Matthew, and Tyler decided to explore a sewer tunnel in their neighborhood. It was winter and very cold outside. The tunnel was at the edge of their neighborhood, under a small creek next to some office buildings. These buildings were empty and dark at night. The boys had seen the tunnel before, but never went inside of it. It always looked creepy, and they joked about it, but deep down they were curious. That night, they finally decided to go in. They brought sleds with them, thinking it would help if someone asked what they were doing. They knew they weren't allowed to be there, but they wanted to do something exciting. Just as they pulled into the parking lot, a police car showed up. A police officer got out and asked what they were doing there. Someone had apparently seen them on the security camera. Tyler quickly said that they were just going sledding. The officer looked at them for a moment, then told them to leave. So they left, but only for a little while. After driving around for about 30 minutes, they came back. This time, they parked farther away, behind a building where no one could see them. They walked down a hill behind the buildings. They could see their breath in the cold, crisp air. They stood in front of the tunnel, noting how big, round, and completely dark inside it was. They turned on their flashlights and walked in.
Turn off your light, everybody. Okay.
Oh, look at that.
Dude, this is oh, look at the date, dude. Oh,
6/19/19.
dude, 19. Oh my god, this is dead.
Dude, how did we even find this? Oh my gosh.
Inside the tunnel, the ground was dry. It was quiet, except for the sound of water dripping deeper in. The walls had graffiti all over them. Most of it looked old, but one thing caught their eye. A date was spray painted in large red numbers. 6/19/19. The paint looked newer than the rest, like it was done recently. That made them feel uneasy. Their flashlights weren't very strong and didn't shine very far. Still, they kept walking and acting tough, but deep down they were nervous. The farther they went, the colder it got. The temperature was dropping fast. Even though they were underground, they could still see their breath. The walls looked like they had ice on them. Big icicles hung down from the ceiling. Some were huge and sharp.
Keep it slow, keep it slow.
Oh, I see a light down there, see it?
I think I saw movement, wait. What's that? Hello?
So keep going?
Did we keep going?
Move forward. Bro. Dude, and these icicles can like impale you, dude. Look how
Suddenly, a loud cracking sound echoing from further down the tunnel sends the group fleeing in fear. The sound resembled something heavy hitting stone. It wasn't any of them. The sound came from deeper inside the tunnel, too far to see. They tripped, slid, and bumped into each other as they rushed to get out. When they got outside, they were shaking and breathing hard. That's when Beck noticed his phone was missing. He had dropped it while they were running. Tyler and Matthew told him to forget about it. They didn't want to go back in, but Beck didn't listen. He grabbed his flashlight and started walking toward the tunnel again. The others followed, but they didn't want to. The tunnel felt different this time. It felt even darker. The air felt heavy and strange, like something was wrong. Their flashlights didn't work as well, and the silence was even worse than before. It felt like something was watching them.
I feel like
I feel like my pocket got like a little emptier over here. Like somewhere over here. Shine it down. Matthew, go over here this way.
dude, dude, that's when we fucking heard the noise.
Shit, dude. Do I have to go back there?
You're going first, bro.
We're not leading the way. Yeah, somebody else lead the way, please.
No, it's your phone.
At some point off camera, Beck found his phone. Afterwards, the group continued deeper into the tunnel investigating. And that's when they heard a sound.
That rock. It must have hit like here or something. What was it? Do you remember?
A loud scream came from deeper in the tunnel. It echoed off the walls and felt like it was getting closer. They didn't wait. They turned and ran as fast as they could. This time, no one talked, no one looked back. They just ran. They got to the car, jumped in, and drove away without stopping. The car ride back was mostly silent. The three friends thought it was over when they all got home. They were ready to move on with their lives. But late that night, Beck's doorbell rang twice. This was at some off hour in the night. When Beck's dad went to answer the door, nobody was there. This, of course, begs the question, were the boys followed home that night? Or was it simply a very unfortunately timed ding-dong ditch? That remains a mystery. The night left more questions than answers for the three friends, but they all heard the noises and of course got it on video. Perhaps it was something they weren't meant to stumble upon. In April of 2022, a man named Connor took a construction job far from home as part of a 3-month accommodation program. The pay was decent, and he needed every dollar. He wasn't in the best place financially, and the bonus of working alongside his longtime friend Jim made the opportunity more appealing. They figured it would be a nice change of pace, extra cash, time away from home, and some peace from the chaos of everyday life. The job itself wasn't bad. A few weeks in, Ryan had adjusted well to the routine, but the area they were stationed in was remote, deep in rural countryside. There were long, winding roads with barely any signs of life. It wasn't unusual to go miles without seeing a single home. Ryan had always loved the outdoors, and he saw this isolation as a chance to unplug. Most of his coworkers blew their weekends drinking, but Ryan had different plans. He wanted solitude. He wanted quiet. So when Friday rolled around, he packed his gear and prepared for a weekend of hiking and camping deep within the woods. A narrow trailhead just 5 minutes from his temporary accommodation became his entry point. Within 20 minutes, he was deep in the forest. The only sound was the wind and the crunch of his boots. He smoked a couple joints as he made his way further in, letting the stress just melt away. The isolation was comforting for him. Well, at first. Around 7 p.m., the sun began to sink behind the treetops. Shadows stretched long across the trail. Ryan knew it was time to find a place to settle. That's when he noticed something unusual. There was a scent in the air, burning firewood, and a light layer of smoke drifted between the trees. At first, it seemed normal, maybe another camper, maybe a local. But then, he caught something just barely in the corner of his vision. The faint orange glow of fire flickering through the trees. Curious and confident, Ryan left the trail and headed towards the source. He wasn't scared. He'd trained in combat sports during his teens and stayed in good shape. Still, something about this felt off to him. As he moved closer, he began to see strange metallic glints. Shopping carts, dozens of them. They were tied to trees with rope hanging for the branches. Some mangled and suspended in bizarre positions, like a twisted jungle gym of rusted steel. It didn't look like a campsite. It looked like a ritual site, like something meant to be seen and feared. Ryan pulled out his phone and started snapping photos. He had to prove this to his friends someday because no one would believe it otherwise. Then, something even stranger caught his eye. Hung directly above the fire was a charred, old-fashioned duck ornament. Sitting in the duck's back was a scorched baby doll. The thing was melted, its limbs warped from heat. Ryan took a photo of that too, but the longer he stared, the more disturbed he felt. His chest began to tighten. The fire was roaring, clearly tended to recently. There were water bottles scattered around. Someone had been there, or currently was there, maybe still watching. He thought about turning around, thought about heading straight back to the trailhead, but something made him keep walking. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, just some weird loner, maybe drunk, probably harmless. Still, he checked over his shoulder more than once. 20 minutes passed, and he'd put real distance between himself and that eerie camp, but daylight was fading fast, and he needed firewood before it got too dark. He veered off the trail again, this time to gather supplies. He wasn't worried. He had emergency wood in his pack, but not enough to last the entire night. He needed more. After about an hour of preparation, Ryan had set up his tent and built a small fire. It was around 9 p.m. when he prepped a steak and potato meal in foil and nestled it in the glowing embers. He smoked another joint to dull the anxiety, and for a while, everything seemed okay again. With his meal finished and the fire crackling, Ryan settled in for the night. He turned on a pre-downloaded playlist of true crime podcasts, listening to cold case files as the forest around him darkened. There was no signal out there, no distractions, just firelight and static-filled voices recounting unsolved murders. At some point, he drifted off to sleep, but it didn't last. He woke up suddenly. The air inside his tent felt colder. The fire outside had dimmed. He checked his phone. 4 a.m. He didn't know what had woken him up until he heard it. Whistling. A slow, eerie tune carried through the trees surrounding his camp. He froze. His body wouldn't move. It was like something inside him had shut down. He lay motionless, listening as the sound crept closer. Then the whistling stopped. What followed was worse. Soft footsteps, fast, light, and quiet, circling his tent. He couldn't see them, but he could hear them crunching twigs and shifting leaves. His heart pounded in his throat. Then, without thinking, his body finally snapped into motion. He jumped up, threw on his boots, and burst out of the tent. What made it worse, what twisted the fear into something primal, was that the footsteps had come from the direction he had entered the trail. The way back to safety was now blocked. He had no choice but to run deeper into the forest. He sprinted as fast as he could, crashing through brush and low branches. But behind him, he could hear more footsteps, multiple, and they weren't in sync. The sounds overlapped, too fast and scattered to just be one person. There were two of them, maybe more. For 5 straight minutes, he ran until his lungs burned and his legs begged for rest. He found a dense cluster of trees and dove into the underbrush, burying himself in leaves and tangled roots. He didn't move. He barely breathed. The footsteps faded, distant now, but he didn't dare come out. He waited, still and silent in the dark. Eventually, he knew he had to move. He crawled through the forest with branches cutting into his arms and legs. Every step was slow and careful. When the trees finally began to thin, he broke into one final sprint. He recognized the trailhead, the way out, and he ran without stopping. No one followed him after that. The forest was quiet, but the damage was done. He got back to his accommodation and immediately reported the incident to the police. They took his statement and promised to investigate, but he never heard anything back. To this day, Ryan believes the people who chased him were the same ones who built that bizarre shrine of carts and dolls. What they were doing out there and what they wanted, he doesn't know, but it was more than just a creepy encounter. To him, it felt ritualistic, cult-like. He finished his contract and returned home, but the memory never left him. He still remembers the sound of the footsteps, the whistling, and the feeling of helplessness. If there's anything to learn from this story, it would be to trust your instincts. If you find something that doesn't feel right, you should leave. Ryan almost didn't, and he knows he might not have lived to tell the story if he had stayed. This video was me experimenting with a slightly different style. If any of you have personal scary experiences that include photos or videos and you'd like to submit them, email them to me and I'll try to make this style of video a new series. Also, if you haven't already, click the bell icon and turn on all notifications because apparently only 15% of you have done so, and that would really help out the channel.